This was supposed to be one of India's biggest, most important privatization deals. We're talking a multi-billion-dollar transaction that was literally years in the making. And then, poof, it was gone. Today, we're figuring out what happened to the deal that disappeared. So let's just get right to it. The massive question on everyone's mind is this: how does a deal this big, one that's been cooking for 4 years, just collapse? I mean, it sounds almost unbelievable, but that is exactly what happened. So let's unpack this story. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at why this was such a landmark deal. Then we'll get into the billion-dollar disagreement that brought it all down. After that, we'll cover the perfect storm of problems swirling around it, and finally, what the fallout looks like for everyone involved. Okay, first things first, let's set the stage. You have to understand, this wasn't just about selling off some shares. No, this was a strategic sale. The whole point was to transfer control and completely reshape a major Indian bank. And just look at this timeline. It really shows you what a long, slow journey this was. It all kicked off with government approval way back in May 2021. Then it just crawled through all these different stages for years, until the final bids landed in early 2024. That's almost 3 full years of work, which, makes the sudden stop in March all the more jarring. At the very heart of this deal was one really important number: 60.72%. That is the massive, controlling stake that was on the table. And let's be super clear here. This wasn't just some financial transaction. This was about the government and LIC handing over the keys to the kingdom, actual management control of the bank. So who was actually doing the selling? Well, it was a team effort. You had the Government of India on one side and the Life Insurance Corporation, LIC, on the other. And as you can see, they were splitting the sale pretty much right down the middle, almost a 50-50 deal. Okay, so if the plan was so clear and it had been moving along for so long, what on earth went wrong? Well, it all came down to one thing, really: the price. Now, to really get why this deal just imploded, you need to know this one key term: reserve price. Think of it like a secret minimum bid at an auction. It's the absolute rock-bottom price the government and LIC decided on behind closed doors. They were not willing to go a single rupee below it. And the big problem? Well, none of the offers from the buyers actually hit that magic number. And this slide right here really captures the whole problem. You basically had 2 totally different ways of looking at the bank's value. On one side, the sellers, the government and LIC, saw a golden ticket. They were offering management control, and they expected buyers to pay a huge premium for that kind of power. But the buyers? They looked at the very same bank and saw a ton of risk. They saw a super competitive market, a lot of uncertainty, and they priced their offer with all of that in mind. That massive difference in perspective created a billion-dollar gap they just couldn't cross. Now, this whole disagreement over the price didn't just happen in a vacuum. There was basically a perfect storm of pressure, both from the outside world and from within India, that made this whole environment incredibly difficult. The global scene was, well, it was really shaky. You had major conflicts flaring up, markets were all over the place, oil prices were climbing, all things that make big investors really, really nervous. Then you add in a weakening rupee, and suddenly a multi-billion-dollar deal starts to look a whole lot riskier and way more expensive for any international buyer. It's a tough sell. And the pressure wasn't just coming from the global markets. It was right here at home, too. See, privatizing a big state-run bank is always a political hot potato. There were huge public concerns about what would happen to thousands of employees, what it would mean for loans to critical sectors like farming, and even worries about job reservations. For a potential buyer, all of this public and political pushback isn't just background noise. It's another layer of risk they have to calculate into their final offer. So, with the deal officially dead, the consequences came fast, and they hit hard. Let's take a look at the immediate fallout. The market's reaction was, to put it mildly, not good. It was instant and it was brutal. As soon as the news broke that the sale was off, IDBI Bank stock just took a nosedive, dropping over 8% pretty much overnight. And to put that 8% drop into perspective, we're talking about a whopping 16,000 crore rupees in market value just gone. That shows you just how much investors were really banking on this deal going through. But the impact here goes way beyond just one bank or its investors. See, this sale was a huge piece of the government's entire budget strategy. The money from this deal was already counted on to help hit some massive disinvestment targets.
Without that cash, there's now a giant hole in the government's financial plans, making those future goals a whole lot harder to reach.
So let's do a quick recap. We had a huge 60.72% stake on the block from the government and LIC, but the bids that came in were just too low to meet that secret reserve price. The deal was called off, and now it puts a serious dent in the government's big picture financial planning. And all of this brings us to the big final question. This deal, this was supposed to be the model, the blueprint for India's whole privatization push. The fact that it fell apart so publicly, well, it shows just how hard it is to balance what the government wants with what the market is willing to pay. It really makes you stop and ask, what does this failure mean for the future of all privatization in India? Hey, if you found this breakdown useful, do us a favor and hit that like button. Share it with someone you think would be interested. And of course, subscribe for more deep dives just like this one. We really want to hear what you think. What's next for IDBI Bank? Does this whole thing change how you feel about privatization? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.